why not sit back, relax, and take things easy like a Sunday morn? I'm your host, Shane Lockwood, and today is the 3rd of April 2022. This is episode 89 of Easy Like a Sunday Morn, and I hope that you are sitting back and relaxing in your favourite armchair, couch, sofa, whatever, possibly with a favourite beverage, or maybe you're in bed and you're trying to get some sleep and you're using the sound of my voice to help you relax and unwind. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes. I've got mine closed. And we're going to breathe in through our nose like this. And then we're going to breathe out through our mouth like this. Breathing in through our nose. And out through our mouth like this. In. Out. In. Out. Then keep going, but this time don't force it. Just be aware of the in of the breath and the out of the breath. Maybe being aware of the sensations in your body as you're slowly winding down and relaxing and things like that. I've not done a podcast episode in well over 6 months, and there are a lot of reasons for that, and I could go into them here, but I won't. And the reason I won't is because I had some feedback saying that the last few episodes have been rather ranty and things like that, and I didn't want to do that kind of podcast. It didn't really mesh with what I had intended for the podcast, and it wasn't really meshing with who I am. And sometimes people will pick up things that I'm unaware of, and then they bring it to your attention, and you think, okay, how do I improve? And I'm always open to constructive criticism, but not necessarily tearing people down, or the criticism where people can't improve. If it's just saying stuff for the sake of saying stuff, don't say it. The other thing that I'm going to be doing is taking control back of not only this podcast, but of my life. In the past, I didn't have any boundaries. There's a long story behind why that was, and I will go into it in another podcast because it can be quite triggering for a few listeners. And when I do that particular podcast, I will have all the trigger warnings and all that sort of stuff at the front of the episode, and I will warn everybody that that's what I'm going to be doing. The little notification thing that I forgot to turn off is letting me know that in an hour or so I'm going to be working on the Telegram app, which is a social media platform for a company that I work for called Splinterlands. And I obviously work in the Telegram, but I'm also on their Discord app and a few of the other social media platforms. I answer questions about the game. Splinterlands is a game. It's a digital collectible card game where all the cards are non-fungible tokens or NFTs. They can be bought, sold, traded, leased for a rental income. You can earn crypto from playing the game and winning and those sorts of things. And so that's what's going to happen in an hour. So I wanted to get this out. I wanted to achieve something, even if it's just a small podcast episode, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 20 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, just so I had a small accomplishment. The last 6 months have been fairly rough. The time before that was even more of an emotional roller coaster. That's why I was ranting. Once again, I'll go into that in a future episode. Right now, I wanted to focus on the positive aspects of my life and beginning to set boundaries. And the first boundary is that this is my podcast. It's nobody else's. And this is for me. You may benefit from it, but ultimately it's for me. It's for me talking into a sock over a webcam, because that's all I could afford at the time. It's rough, it's ready. It's not in a studio. There's a million things wrong with my computer right now. There's a whole heap of things that I could be complaining about, and things that need to be fixed and whatnot. But I'm working on my self-esteem first. And once again, I'll go into the reasons why my self-esteem has taken a battering, like over the last 6 months and before that. But once again, I'm going to focus on the positive aspects of my life, and you feel free to comment in the comments about the positive aspects in your life, whether anything that I've said has helped you improve your life at all. I also want to thank my uncle Lee for reminding me and just letting me know, because I knew before, but he reminded me that he listens to the podcast. It's a little thing, but if you have a favorite podcast, please let the podcasters know. Now, they might have 1 million fans, right? You don't know. They might say that they do. Now, I don't know how many people listen to this. I've got a rough idea of the stats, but I don't know how many people share the videos, share the podcasts with their friends and say, hey, listen to this, or this guy can really help you get to sleep and all that sort of stuff. So the first thing is, one, with Splinterland, it's a great job to have, and I work from home. So I've got a factory job during the day. So I get up at 6 a.m. I get up and leave the house at 5 a.m. Start at 6 a.m. at the factory job. Come home at 2:30, and arrive home at. I'll leave work at 2:30. Arrive home at 3, and around about, because of daylight savings, I know my new start time is around about 4 o'clock, 4:30. And I come in, and at home I work on the Splinterland stuff. So that's a positive. Now, they have cut my hours back, which is not a positive, and there's all sorts of reasons for that too, but I'm moving forward. A book I've been reading is called The Arsehole Pandemic by Angelica Koch. That's Koch. Now, I do have a listener who has a surname with a similar pronunciation. I just didn't want to be, it's actually pronounced Coke or Koch, but I just didn't want to be rude. And what it is, it's like a guide to detecting or identifying the assholes in our life, and building boundaries and self-respect, and learning to basically avoid these really toxic people. The stuff that was going on that I'll definitely talk about in a future episode was that I was in a very toxic relationship, and of a specific type, and I'll go into that because it's so in depth and upside down and back to front that it's so difficult to explain, and it won't make sense unless you've been through it. It's one of those things that it's fairly new to psychology as well, so there's not a whole lot of people you can actually talk to about it. There's a lot of support online, thankfully, but yeah, it's quite interesting, but I'll talk about that future time. A video game that I've been playing is Dying Light 2, and if you love zombie games, it's a fantastic. The sequel's a lot more gory, so obviously not for kids, and people swear and all that sort of stuff in the game. But the added premise of this one is that there are very few guns in the game. It's very hands-on melee kind of fighting, and they incorporated in the first one, they incorporated parkour, and then there was a downloadable content update where you could drive around in cars and things as well. The sequel is a city management system where there are two factions that you can support, and you get to determine which faction gets the majority of the water in certain sections of the city that you're in. But you get to do parkour. So you're running around, jumping from building to building, doing parkour. I've gotten to the point where I've unlocked the paraglider, which is like a mini hang glider kind of thing that you can deploy whenever you want. And I've upgraded the vents so I can actually control the paraglider when I'm out and about flying and things like that. So it's really, really cool, a really good game, and I thoroughly recommend it. It's sort of like an RPG in that you can upgrade your skills, and you can upgrade like your health and your stamina as you go up. As you find, not necessarily levels, but okay, the combat and the parkour are two separate skill sets. There's skill trees, and as you go up levels, you get points which you can then spend on either combat or parkour, and you get points by doing combat or parkour. So it's very much it's based on your activity. It determines what skills you get, but the other stuff, the city stuff, the city management stuff is through like liberating windmills and the water supply, because the windmills pump the water around the city, and you get to determine which faction gets what. And then there are bonuses for each faction, and you have to choose between which kind of bonuses and things within the environment that you want. Because as you reintroduce water back into the environment, the grass grows back again, and then people can start growing crops and vegetables and things like that. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Then you've got the health and the stamina come from these inhibitor canisters, because the main character he's been infected with the virus, the zombie virus, but it only affects him at night, and if you turn into a zombie, you die. But you've got like a bio monitor that determines how close you are to turning, and then you've got like immunity boosters and things like that, so you can run around at night when you'd normally transform into a zombie, but you've got like these immunity boosters that prolong the period that you have between transformations. So it delays it, and then you're constantly looking for resources and buying and selling things as well. So brilliant little economy, and I love the game. It's really, really cool. It stars Rosario Dawson as that's spoiler, but it does star her as a character in the game, which I thought was really classy as well. Yeah. What else is there? I bought like a whole heap of other financial books as well. So once I go through and finish The Arsehole Pandemic by Angelica Koch, I'll be moving on to like financial books and things like that, because I want to get my finances in order. I'm doing okay financially. I've got more money now than I've ever had before, but it's starting to go backwards. Like I said before, my hours are being cut in the work that I'm doing. So I'm looking for like alternative forms of income, things I can do online, nothing scammy, just legit forms of income. And that's why I'm back doing the podcast as well. But primarily because I'm trying to get my life back in order, take control. This is my podcast, and there were people that were trying to tell me how to run it. And I don't mind feedback in terms of, say, content, or let's say if I was being too ranty, tell me I'm being too ranty. If it's too boring, if it's too long, if it's this or that, I can take that on board. That's fine. That's criticism. But when people were attacking me through the podcast, or about the podcast, or how often I was uploading episodes and that sort of stuff, and now that wasn't from a listener. That was from a previous relationship, and those sorts of things, like anything that sort of undermines what I'm doing, or even in your life, if the people that are undermining what you're doing, they need to be boundaries there, and they need to be told to stop. Okay. So I'm going to be doing a lot more positive attitude stuff, how to defend yourself against things like criticism and just unwanted nonsense, right? People project all sorts of stuff onto you, and you don't need to absorb it or accept it. Okay, here's a little thing. About 4 weeks ago, I started, just on a spur of a moment whim, I walked past the gardening section of my local Big W store, and there was a little thing that said, grow your own tomatoes. And there was coriander, basil, strawberries, and like a few other things. So I'm thinking, okay, well, tomatoes are okay. There's a practical use. I can eat the tomatoes if I manage to grow them and stuff like that. They are dwarf tomatoes. So I think, okay, cool, I can do that. And so it's been 4 weeks, and I've been posting photos of the growth of that on Instagram, and then the photos should be available on Facebook. For those of you who aren't following me on Instagram or Facebook, I will be uploading the photos to the Patreon feed so you can see what I'm talking about. And I've progressed to buying a few more plants, like the seeds for the plants, and looking up things like the appropriate season for planting the seeds, because I made the mistake of planting tomatoes in the wrong season, even though they're starting to thrive, which is okay. I'm pleased about. The second batch of tomatoes, it's not working out as well, but that's okay. We'll get there. It's a project for me. It's about me getting my life back after being in a toxic, controlling environment, relationship kind of thing. So I'll be setting boundaries and working on personal development, self-esteem, and talking about a whole range of things, because I think there's a lot of stuff that's actually quite complicated and very difficult to explain to people who haven't experienced it. There's a lot of stuff that's very covert, it's very inverted, it's very back to front, and especially when it comes into things like manipulation, and it's so subtle, and very often the people that are victims of this sort of thing are unaware of it at the time because it's covert. You're not meant to be aware of it. If you were openly aware of it, you'd put a stop to it straight away. You'd put your foot down, you'd raise the boundaries, all your shields would be up, and you'd cut certain people out of your life. And I could name and shame a whole group of people. But I also know, and this is the really bad part, the bad part is it would make me look bad, right? Because people would want to know, well, why are you saying this now? Or what is your agenda? Are you trying to deflect? Are you trying to point the finger? When you point fingers at somebody else, there's 3 pointing back and all that sort of stuff. Cliched nonsense, right? So that's going to be all in a future episode of this particular podcast. I can hear sirens, so that means it's time to cut this fairly short. It's an ambulance, so that was a joke. But yeah, and I also want to get back into doing stand-up comedy. There's a reason why I stopped, which was because of the crap that was going on. But yeah, I want to once again say thank you to my Uncle Lee, who reminded me that he listened to the podcast, and all those who do leave like feedback and comments and things like that. And yeah, so slowly but surely, see, planting tomatoes, and this is not the time of year to do that. I suggest things like lettuce or peas, which are a bit more in keeping, well, in Australia at least, the autumn and winter months are probably best ideal for like peas and lettuce and things like that, carrots. No, not carrots. Carrots would be summer, I think, summer and spring. But anyway, yeah, so that's what I'm talking about next time, and look out for that. Oh, I do have a hernia operation coming up this week, and I've waited like an entire year for it. And yeah, other positive news is that with my factory job, it'll be a year that I've worked there since like Easter last year, like just after Easter. And yeah, that's pretty amazing too. But yeah, awesome stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there. I hope you've had like a really good like 20 minutes to just relax and unwind and just listen to me rabbit on for so long. And hopefully I'm going to be playing a whole lot more video games. I would have read a whole lot more books, and my tomato plants should have grown a little bit more as well by the time I upload the next particular podcast. I hope that you are fantastic and well and looking after yourself, and please set boundaries and lift your self-esteem. You are more than enough. You are amazing just for the virtue of having listened to something that I've recorded. And like, I live in Adelaide, South Australia. I don't know where you live, right? Now, the majority of my listeners are probably going to be in Australia somewhere. But there will be people on the other side of the planet listening to this. Just me recording something in my kitchen. How crazy is it? How amazing is this technology that we have? And that I can upload something and in an instant somebody else on the other side of the planet is listening to it. It's really incredible. I think sometimes we do need to stop and appreciate the little things like that. The growing of the tomatoes was just something small. If I could take some soil and a few seeds, add some water, and then wait a week and have them sprout and come to the surface, I will have achieved more than most of my abusers have with their life. And when you do little things like that for you, right, you take back control. Anyway, this is going to get really deep, so I'm going to cut this here. May today and the rest of the week be easy like a Sunday morn. See you next time. Bye.